Well, we'll have a very lively discussion. I am so very excited to host this group of technologists and very experienced go-to-market leaders to talk about, the very hot topic about going to market in AI and in enterprise. Maybe a quick introduction. My name is Jennifer Lee. I lead our infrastructure and SaaS investments at Jason Horowitz on the early stage side. I was a product builder. I was on the product side, playing with a lot of the tools, dev tools, and AI before. It was cool. And then now I have, the luxury of being able to back early stage companies in building products for developers, for researchers, for, data scientists, and so on. And with me, I would love to, maybe quickly hand over to Monique to give yourself introduction.
Sure. I'm Monique Shivanandan. I'm the Group Chief Data and Analytics Officer. That's a lot of words. At HSBC. I basically do data at HSBC. I have been at HSBC for a little over 4 years. I've been the analytics in this role for the last 2 years. Prior to that, I was the Chief Information Security Officer. So it's kind of an interesting combination. For the 10 years prior to that, I was a CIO at a couple of banks, at one bank and 2 insurance companies. So have been delving in tech and new technology for many, many years, and really excited about the topic of AI and what it can bring.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Nemeth. I am the Chief Operating Officer of Pinecone. Pinecone is a leading vector database solution, purpose-built for AI. We also have an inference and assistant product. In my Chief Operating Officer capacity, I run everything from sales, customer success, marketing, partnerships, anything customer-facing and money-making. And my background is over 20 years in leading go-to-market organizations from pre-revenue to $4 billion plus in revenue.
Can you hear me? Yes, you can. My name is Marjorie Janiewicz. I'm the Global Head of Revenue at Mistral. Our mission is to make generative AI ubiquitous via technology, including large language models. I have about 24 years experience in building go-to-market teams globally, spent sometimes at MySQL, MongoDB, Oracle on the database side, and then built go-to-market teams also on the cyber side with HackerOne and then Foursquare on geolocation. So hoping we can discuss open source at some point today.
Hi guys, I'm Keerti Melkote. I am the CEO of Anyscale, which is a company behind open source product called Ray, which is the AI compute engine behind most of the models that you might be using. The software is used for distributed training and serving models of all sizes. And I've been here 2 or 3 months now. And before that, I started a company called Aruba Networks. So we were in the Wi-Fi space, and I went through about 22 years there, took it public, sold it to HP, ran the networking business for HP for a long time, and eventually got sucked into the AI wave.
Amazing. Our topic today is finding product market fit, the path to AI breakthrough. I guess my first question is, how do you really define product market fit in this era? Because from an investor perspective, I've seen a lot of products, coming, got really, popular and a lot of adoption, but sometimes it tapers off. Sometimes they have to sort of pivot a little bit into like really finding a vertical or a use case that's like, serving the needs of an end goal. So in each of your role, maybe I'll start from you, Monique, of thinking about, when you're adopting tools or when you're building maybe products for your internal stakeholders, how do you think about that product market fit?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting because, there are products to do everything. And sometimes, in some of the early stages of some tech, you look for a solution. You looked for that as a solution to a problem you may or may not have. And so we're really taking what we need to do with AI from what is it that we want to achieve with it? And there's really 3 things. First is really how can we improve the experience for our customers and our associates? And if it doesn't tick that box, we actually don't even go there. And so if you take about it from our associates, we're really looking at 2 associate groups, the developers, our development community. We at HSBC have about 70,000 developers. So what we can do to improve our developer experience is really, really important. So we're looking at things like platforms where the developers can build easier, CI/CD, and automated development, right, assisted development. We look at what we can do to help our customer operations folks, a similar size team. How do we improve facilitate their job much more easily, right? Because we have them doing some things that aren't that great. So how do we take that out? And then really, how do we delight our customers? How do we create experiences for our customers that they love? And so they keep coming back to us with what they need. And so if you don't fit one of those three, we probably won't even start to look at it. And so that's really how I think we're looking at it.
Got it. That makes sense. And maybe from the revenue leader and,
Sure.
and operating partners point of view, like how do you think about it first from the business point of view, but also do you have any metrics you track against like if we're achieving product market fit?
Yeah, I mean, at Pinecone, we're a product-led growth business. So our primary ICP is a developer all day, every day, right? So it could be a long-tail developer. It could be a developer in a large bank like SBC, but it's really about building beautiful API experiences, making sure that their time to deployment is really quick, making sure that they can import data into the vector database really efficiently, that they can hook up to LLMs efficiently. So a lot of those metrics that are actually more, I would almost call it like product telemetry of like how are developers first experiencing with the product, how quickly can they actually get to some sort of production level scale. Those are really important metrics for us. But I do think like developers are now maturing. Like if you see some of our biggest customers today, they're really big software companies, which are, call it really well-funded developers at the end of the day. And so working with them to really figure out not just like what are you doing in AI broadly, but how are they actually generating ROI? So a lot of what our focus there is like, are companies able to create skilled workloads and actually generate revenue or increase productivity or efficiency in their teams? And that's a lot of kind of where we're measuring the quality of our product more down funnel.
From my perspective, I would take it in two different dimensions. I've been part of organizations that took quite a bit of time to achieve product market fit, and now I'm experiencing something quite different. So it's helping me to kind of recognize the differences between the two. But one is how are your defensible differentiators really resonating? The reason why you've built your product differently or from a different approach compared to your competition, are those resonating differently with the audience? Is one way to understand if you have product market fit for your own solution. And then the other side of it, going back to what you were saying a moment ago, is being able to start measuring the value that your customers are experiencing, whether it's improvement in revenue, improvement in efficiency, all the way to reduction of risk. When you start doing proof of concept or start seeing how your product are being adopted, really taking double attention in measuring that success in terms of risk, cost, revenue is kind of helping validating if you have a repeatable process and if you have product market fit, leading into value market fit once you start being able to charge in measure from the business value that you're unlocking.
Yeah, for Anyscale, I feel it's a little different. We are a system software as opposed to an AI model. And the specific challenge we have is adding value on top of the open source. The open source software, so in fact, Ali Godse, who's the CEO of Databricks, mentioned for an open source startup, you need to have 2 home runs, not 1. You have to achieve product market fit the first time for the open source product, and you have to do it again for monetizing it. And where we are in the open source has achieved product market fit. There's huge traction. We just came back last week from our summit, developer summit. We had over 2,000 developers there, who's who in terms of the kinds of customers that were there, but nobody really pays us much. It's all based on the open source. And so for us, as we look at the Anyscale opportunity, it is how do we add value above and beyond the open source product? And there's a few dimensions to it. One is performance, and can you help customers directly save money? GPU spend is a huge line item in AI, and so optimizing GPU spend, giving them either money back or optimizing the estate that they have is one of the areas that we are iterating on. The other areas are in the developer productivity area, basically giving data scientists who are used to working with models, typically on their laptop, using tools like PyTorch. How do you now take that and scale it across a farm of thousands of GPUs, right? That's the core problem we solve, but that's a system problem. The developer productivity problem is taking the developer tools like VS Code and making that scale across a whole farm of GPUs. So making that easy, I think, is a big area. And then finally, governance. Enterprises, and we are going after our enterprises, they're looking for governance tools around spend, around security and everything else, and safety. So those are the areas. Again, we are, I would say, on the way to achieving product market fit, not yet there. But I feel like having done it once at Aruba and doing it again here, the fundamentals hasn't changed, which is you take the product to customers, they give you feedback, what works, what doesn't, and you really very closely listen to what they're saying and iterate with the customers very rapidly. And that's really where it is, as opposed to having lots of ideas in the back office. When you really meet the market, you got to take the feedback super seriously, and that's going to be a shift for most founders.
As a customer, that's the kind of companies we like to work with as well. So that constant feedback where it's a give and take is really exactly, if you're selling to a customer like us, that's what we want, is we want that interaction.
The one consistent theme I heard from all the panelists is like developers today are kingmakers. They are the first adopters of the technology, the models, putting them into product experiences. And Lauren already mentioned about this developer ergonomic, like how to make it easy to use and provide a really sleek experience to get people onboarded. I'm curious, both from, I guess, you are building developer-focused tools and also having developers in-house adopting tools as well. Like, what are some of the interesting anecdotes and best practices you have seen? Because it's a very, let's say, tasteful sort of experience of what is a good DevX developer ergonomics, and how do you go from individual developers to what you were talking about, Keerti, of into the enterprise realm? Whoever wants to get started.
In our case, I think we started out creating tools inside our platform, Python notebooks, integration with Jupyter notebooks, and so on, to help them get onboarded to the platform very easily. So that's, I think, one of the most important thing is not isolating them. If there are tools that are already workflows they're already familiar with, integrating into their existing workflows is usually a very simple, easy way through APIs or whatever else. But in our case, we had to actually create the full tooling, starting with VS Code, which is running on your laptop all the way into the back end, right? So, and ensuring security governance and all these things are taken care of along the way, because developers don't like to think of all of that. They want to think of the primary task, which is, I have my data, I'm trying to build a model, I'm going to serve the model, how's the model performing? Is it efficient? Is it effective? Those are the questions that they're asking. And the IT organization on the back end is the data compliant with everything else? Are you using it in the right way? Are the models going to be safe? There's a whole bunch of other governance questions. And they usually don't, there are usually other teams that worry about that. So providing a converged experience where you have a smooth, frictionless developer experience, but also gives you the safety nets of ensuring the compliance pieces are taken care of is where I think the magic is.
I think the other thing I would add is developers don't want to be sold to. Even though I'm an unapologetic salesperson in my core, I can confidently say developers don't want to be sold to. They want to be able to say, here's my use case, here's the problem that I have, help me solve this more effectively. So kind of similarly what you're pointing out, in our onboarding flows, we spend a lot of time understanding what is your use case? What are you trying to achieve? Are you opinionated about the LLM you want to use or not? Do you want to understand more of the art of the possible for financial services versus retail, et cetera? Nurturing them through that flow to make sure that we're addressing their core use case and also giving them an opportunity to give us feedback. And as opposed to putting them in touch with a salesperson, we basically put them in touch with a product expert or solutions engineer to troubleshoot a lot of those issues. And I think that whether it's a long tail developer or even a mature enterprise, they want to see, particularly in AI, more of the art of the possible technically. LLMs are constantly changing. What re-ranker you should use, what's your chunking and parsing strategy, all these things day in and day out change. And so the ability for us to institute those best practices, be thought leaders, help them through that process is kind of where we focus.
And I think it's focusing on where you're unique. So if you come into an enterprise and ask us to change everything that existed before in order to adopt the new tool, it's not going to last very long. And so it really is focus on the thing that you're going to be best at and be best at it, but integrate with the ecosystem that exists, because there's too much. It's that frictionless experience for the developers and actually for the people that are managing the developers, so that we don't have to start all over again to get the benefit of the capability that you bring.
The only thing I would add on this also, this is where the power of open source comes to play. I think there's so much learning with your product being out there, and then coupled with an investment in developer relations from the beginning. We do hackathon on a regular basis to really hear from the developers live what the experience is, what the wishes are. And typically we do find that the requirements coming bottom up can be quite different from the requirements at the top. And in the end, it's about connecting the two when you start deciding what to build next in your product.
Can I tell you what the coolest thing is? When I started working, there would be 4 men and maybe 1 woman up here. And the developer was the geek that nobody really cared about. So this is the most awesome conversation.
That's right.
The developer's king.
Yeah. You already touched upon a couple roles that I found really interesting. This popped into my head of like where you're finding leverage in early go-to-market, product market fit, figuring out the highest leverage roles. Developer experience or DevRel is like a very popular role if you have, let's say, bottom-up open source company, and solutions engineering, they're really trying to, give help and also learn the user behaviors. What are some, are these the type of, architects that you're looking for in the early figuring out product market fit? Or are there other roles that you're like, oh, this is quite different from, let's say, 10 years ago when we're trying to figure out PMF? We're hiring sales leader, we're hiring AEs. Like, what are you finding leverage right now in these type of, go-to-market roles?
I'm finding, at least at Mistral, where the product is quite technical, and we're all still building the future. There's a lot of ideation where the traditional role of pre-sales is just way more technical. And you used to be able to have your most senior people on the pre-sales front focus on the enterprise, and folks that were a little bit junior focus on the startups. But startups are building the future of AI, and you do need also to invest in pretty technical solution architecture resources. I also found that having dedicated folks thinking about PLG day in and day out, folks that may not have fully an enterprise sales leader hat on, but somebody that really thinks about the product as the between brackets sales channel is effective, and somebody that knows both marketing, sales, and product in one human is important to see PLG taking quite a good basically producing results faster.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think one thing I'd also add is that people actually with more of like a consulting background, or people who are deeply curious and I think experts in AI, who can work with customers to figure out, hey, here's your existing systems and tools. Here's where your data is housed today. Like, how do we build something that is bespoke and almost personalized to your experience? Like, it requires a very different person, where you're not just kind of showing up and throwing up from a sales or solutions engineering perspective, but you're really trying to be a thought leader, trying to share best practices, and I think solutions something that feels very bespoke to the customer.
Yeah, +1 to both of these. We are finding field engineering. We call it field engineering because there was this question on, is it pre-sales, is it post-sales, or is it resident engineers? What is it? And we basically said it doesn't matter. It's customer work. And so I don't care what you call it. It's in the field. And so you're going to go there and figure out what problem they're trying to solve is and work your way back from there. And it really varies. For us, the digital natives, if you're selling to like Ubers and Pinterest and Airbnbs of the world, they tend to have a higher degree of software engineering talent. And for us specifically, we're looking for a role called machine learning platform engineers. People, they're basically data science people who also like engineering and want to make things scale. It's a rare breed. There's not a lot. And so we are trying to figure out how to help those people, or if they're not yet there, how to train customers to get to a level where with certifications and the like. But until the point that we have a mass of certified machine learning platform engineers in the world, we are it. And whether it's software, it's field engineering, doesn't matter. We have to go out there and help out. And so it's like that push-pull. We are trying to push through our own engineers with partners And then the pull is the customers looking to figure out how to do it, and there's using training and support and these kinds of services.
Super cool. I love the field engineering title. I'm going to start using it. From my vantage point, working with mostly like Series A, sometimes C companies, I really find it's really hard to find the type of developer advocates that are very technical, can build demos, and also imagining the right use case for the end customer, that it's not just a cool, flashy demo, but you can actually really imagine from there to how you apply that. That's the type of like dev advocacy work that, you know, I see really working in this era. Given that it's moving, like the field is moving so fast everywhere from, let's say, the platform stack to all the way database layer and then like models, applications, I'm curious how you're thinking about for each of your own company, this is probably more for the company leaders, and also I guess, Monique, I'm curious about how you're evaluating vendors in thinking about their longevity of like figuring out this competitive dynamic and competitive edge. Where do you really want to shine? Is it really more on the vertical that we really understand these vertical customers better and have the relationship and the use case, or like really expansively expanding to on the capability side? How do you think about those trade-off and the competitive edge?
Great point. I'll start. I mean, I think one way that we think about it is actually through partnerships, which maybe is an unusual answer. At Pinecone, we have zero interest in ever being an LLM. We will never be an LLM. Like, we want to deeply partner with great LLMs. We're never obviously going to be a cloud hosting company. We want to deeply partner with those as well. But what we want to own, like the part of the stack that we want to own, is being able to understand knowledge and context in any unstructured document on the planet. And the better I can understand that context and exactly what is being discussed, I can feed more accurate information into those LLMs. So I think just like being very clear about this is the part of the ecosystem that we sit in. And within that, like the quality of the context, the ease of being able to get data in and out, being able to structure that data in a way that it feeds into your LLM really effectively to bring down hallucinations, et cetera, et cetera. Like that's what we wake up every day to do. And actually some of our best go-to-market is actually in tandem with LLMs and cloud hosting companies.
I think one thing that to me is between bracket a lifesaver is always being clear from the beginning with what your mission is and what you want to be good at, what you're not going to want to be good at, which goes back to what you just said, and then becoming experts at it. So for us, we want to drive generative AI to be ubiquitous. We want to be portable. We want to be highly customizable, and we want to focus on cost over performance. And we are building the models, but also the technology around it. And then to your PowerPoint, partnering in the ecosystem. I think the other point also is, I mean, we are learning a lot in that fast-paced environment and always sharing those best practices on what works and what doesn't work from a proof of concept to production with the customers along the way. Through well-developed services and through automation, you can also differentiate yourself beyond purely the technology.
Yeah, I think it's actually the same thing. Knowing your identity is very important. Knowing why you started the company, what was your vision, and where it's going to go. I think it's what happens is this space in particular is so fast-paced. Every couple of weeks there's something new, and sometimes you wonder: is your vision still valid? Is it not? Is it something additive that just happened that you need to change your roadmap for? And these are all valid questions, and it's fine to run experiments in the context of your identity. And if you're going too far away, then it's likely a pivot. You never say never, but know what it is before you actually do it, because that changes the identity of the company. And a lot of the work I'm trying to do right now, Anyscale is super successful in the open source community, and there's like a ton of opportunities. So it's about saying no and saying, we're not going to do these 99 things, and we're going to get this one thing right. And that, I think, is the hardest part, honestly, is saying no to the 99 different things. But that's my job, and that's the job of the founders as well, that are out here to kind of pick the one thing that you're going to do and do it really well. And everything else you partner, you find ways to kind of make the whole better.
Yeah, and maybe I'll just add a little bit before you answer, Monique, onto the question of when you're thinking, we're putting your buyer's hat on and evaluating vendors. there's a lot of discussion around bundling and bundling now because the big clouds now can also deliver a lot of capabilities. How do you think about doing the one thing well, the best of breed type of adoption versus?
It's really
platform?
interesting because I think when we're looking at it, we really are looking at, as I said, what are the outcomes that it's going to benefit? What is it going to give out? What is the customer experience, internal and external customer experience that we're trying to deliver? And what's the best way, differentiated way to deliver that? And so I think what is interesting is with the big tech vendors, you're right, they're starting to do that, but it's pretty generic. And so what we look for is if it really is differentiated for that specific experience, big or small, we'll work with you to figure out how to make it work. The thing that matters, though, and I love the partnerships, your answer was like a beating of my heart because we don't want to put all the pieces together. We want to get that experience. And so the more that you can come up with a solution, even if the whole solution isn't just you, the better the answer is. And I do think there is HSBC is a huge company, and we've been the place where innovators have been birthed, because we do bring those capabilities forward so we can differentiate our service. So we do want something that's unique and different. The big thing too is it has to be frictionless going in. So if it takes us years and years to fit into, and we don't have this beautiful, we don't look like a Netflix. We don't have this very clean environment that you can sit in. We have a lot of stuff that's old, new, and different. So the frictionless coming in is super important for us as well. So the more you guys partner to come to us with a solution, the better.
Yeah, and that's what we love to do from venture capitalists and also operating help with a portfolio company as well, is thinking about how to construct the ecosystem and the partnerships on every single layer of the stack. And really, the point is just to serve the customers in a much more easy to adopt way while they're well integrated. Everybody does its job well, and then being able to deliver the end customer value. I have a couple of specific questions for the panelists. I'll probably start with you, Lauren. Knowing that Pinecone is a very, powerful and also probably came with the longest history of a vector database. Pinecone has been around before LLMs are cool. Mm-hmm. Thinking about the arc of, Pinecone's journey and also where you're seeing, the different segments and verticals that this scale you mentioned, not just developer experience, can actually really empower and enable enterprises to, generate and arrive at value. How do you think about, where do you go deep while having this very massive developer adoption?
I love how a 5-year-old company is old school now, particularly in AI. So yeah, we're 5 years old, but we were obviously a first mover in the vector database market. ChatGPT was the best tailwind that could have possibly happened to Pinecone's business. But honestly, even today, we have 4,000 developer signups a week still on Pinecone, which is amazing. And so the business continues to grow. I think where we're seeing the most traction, and kind of what I would say is more of scaled workloads. Last year, we saw tons of companies or developers coming in, kicking the tires, trying to really figure out what they were doing in AI. Let's be honest, we're pretty rudderless, didn't know what they wanted to do. We saw a pretty dramatic spike this year in what I would probably categorize 3 main verticals, and I'd say 1 predominant use case. I'm going to really simplify this down. RAG is without question the biggest use case that we see at Pinecone today. Probably not telling you anything you don't already know in AI. And I'd say the 3 main verticals that we see are software companies or B2B companies broadly are sort of in this dilemma of maybe innovate or die with AI. And they're trying to figure out great, if I'm a software company trying to drive sales automation or marketing automation, whatever it is today, how am I going to embed AI into that experience to really drive revenue? That's really what that core customer cohort is. That is probably our largest vertical today. Secondly, is we have a lot of just what I would call endemic AI first companies. It's a lot of startups, probably people who are even in this room might be built on Pinecone as well. But we're seeing a huge influx of obviously funding that's going into AI, innovation of new companies that are building AI, and I think using Pinecone as that core vector database, but not to give you lip service. Financial service is actually the third, and that's kind of where we're seeing also a lot of innovation and opportunities to actually create more productivity and efficiency probably in financial services is what we're seeing, where there's a lot of just like toil and human work that goes into financial services today that they're trying to figure out how can I use AI to make that a lot more automated. And so we're focusing a lot of the art of the possible on those three verticals.
Yeah, and maybe I'll throw another question in there. That's the open source, closed source comparison, because we have two other open source company, and Pinecone is a closed source database, but there are a lot of open source alternative. How do you think about the dynamic between working with the ecosystem that has more open source, while the closed source version of it really helps with performance and adoption and larger scale deployments and so on and so forth.
Just like I said, we'll never be an LLM. We'll never be an open source solution either. That's probably another point of Pinecone religion, I would say, and knowing who we are. I think for us, it's a compliance security piece that allows us to do a lot more there. We also don't want to be all things to all people. We want to be really good at a great closed source solution. That's where we started. That's where we can continue to kind of create our competitive edge. Open source companies are great. That's not to naysay. It's just a different solution for a very different buyer.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, going to our open source companies, I'm curious for Anyscale story. I mean, you mentioned already there's a big open source community and also a lot of developer interest, but also selling platforms are hard, right? Platforms companies take years to build. People sometimes build their own solutions and they patch around open source before they adopt the closed source platform itself. How do you also think about bringing the open source users and developers along the way while being able to now sell into the larger companies? And I think the point coming back to partnerships as well, how does Anyscale think about the ecosystem above, let's say, all the model players versus this compute layer that Anyscale is playing really well in?
Yeah, I think this is the heart of the conversations every week at Anyscale. And for us, what we found is platform companies are definitely hard, and platforms are hard to sell because by their very nature, they're multi-use case, right? And so for us, the use cases that our customers end up using in the open source context, it's either you do data pre-processing, massive amounts of data pre-processing, and as you know, with model scaling now, the larger the models, the better your results. So we are seeing similar action in data pre-processing, and then you have training, which is its own thing, and there's very deep ecosystem for training. And then we have fine-tuning, which is taking models and making it apply to, it's like a variation of RAG. RAG is used on top. Fine-tune, you go into the model and you actually change the weights and biases and so on. And then finally, you have serving, of which, again, there is online and offline serving. So we have all these use cases, and customers in the open source world at least use it across the board. And so as we look to, some customers use it uniquely for one thing. I use Ray for training and that's it. But some customers use it for multiplicity of use cases. So we tend to find that our sweet spot is customers that want to host multiple use cases on the common platform. And because it's a platform and we are a very low-level compute platform, we look to partner with everything else. There's a huge ecosystem that we need to kind of support. PyTorch on, for example, the training side, Databricks and Snowflake integration and all kinds of other connectors, Pinecone and so on for databases, for data pre-processing. So the ecosystem development is a big part of the story as you go do this. But ultimately, we realized as well on the go-to-market, product market fit, platforms, for us at least, is high-end. Large organizations tend to adopt platforms. And so our go-to-market has changed from, we tried PLG a little bit, but it was not a fit. We had to go sell into the CIO organization and sell to the developers pretty much at the same time. So it's high-end enterprise motion, field engineering intense, and that's kind of where we are pivoting towards, is to establish the platform value upfront with multiple constituents on the customer side and go build. The payoffs are huge, but it's also slow. So you have to kind of actually be comfortable with that.
Yeah, that make a lot of sense. And knowing there are a lot of already at scale deployments of Ray, people already see sort of the benefits from being able to do that and increase efficiency from both training and inference side. It's the time that it takes to get all the gears plugged in.
Yeah, I think for us, one other thing, if I may add, the Gen AI ChatGPT moment really created a lot of interest. And the last year and a half, everybody wanted to figure something out with Gen AI. But now I find the market is becoming more mature, and they're looking at, okay, you know what? Classical AI is still huge. Predictive models are still huge. So I need to figure out how to merge all of these use cases on a single platform. And that's really helping us a lot.
Definitely. I'd love to come back to that question because it's, I think, a very interesting one of where we're seeing maturity and maturing use cases into this market. But before then, Marjorie, I also wanted to ask you the same question around, building open source AI company, especially on the model front. Like, people love Mistral because it's out there and open. At the same time, it probably creates some challenge around how you're thinking of commercialization. Like, how do you balance? What do you keep closed source, or where do you, thinking about revenue growth versus keep increasing the expansion of this developer love and community?
And it's my third open source database, my third open source company too, where databases, and I would say that the opportunities and the challenges are quite different from one industry to the other. I think first for us, open source is just a way to fulfill our mission, thinking that large language model and the technology associated with it is too important to be kept in the hands of very large, powerful companies. So that's the number one reason why we are open source. Second, it's driving massive adoption. I think we are at about 15 million downloads of our models open source. So love Apache 2.0 as a revenue leader. After that, I think from a company perspective, and it's true in Gen AI and it's true anywhere else, I think it's being clear on what are the needs of your users. Like, someone that may be interested to build, develop, try with open source may be a very different profile from somebody planning to launch a use case in production in a very large bank, for example. So being very in tune with what the requirements are on the functionality front, on the services front, and having two user personas and building really your open source stack and your enterprise commercial models based on that user profile is a good way to go about it. Now, the problem is the world is evolving very fast. We push models every 4 weeks. So we try to make sure that when we publish something open source, we provide capabilities that are superior on the enterprise side. But it's like a full cycle. We always try to bring things back in open source or start things from the open source and bring into the enterprise, but keeping those user profiles clear in the strategy to make the right choices. Yeah.
Super cool. Well, Monique, actually, going back to Keerti's question, I'm actually curious, given you're a data leader, so you might be having the data answer too. Like, how much of, let's say, enterprise like HSBC is adopting like true LLMs, like in the AI fashion? Like, are these large models, or there are just a lot of like more enhancements of traditional smaller models?
Yeah, I think.
And also, how you're thinking about whether it's a distinction even between the two, like is it more of a gradient of workloads that are scaling up versus that's just a very distinct like Gen AI LLM use case?
I think it's really interesting because your point was really right. It's what's the right balance? What's the right thing to use what one for? And I think there is a lot of benefit in generative AI, but I think we should use generative AI where there is benefit and not try and fit AI in. So I think there's the challenge in a bank or in a large corporate is getting a generative AI model approved is much more difficult than getting a regular AI model approved. So it really has to have that differentiated and recognizing that the sales cycle is will be longer. I think what we've learned is when we started this and talking about maturing last year, if I sat on this stage, I would have said we had 1,000 use cases that we were looking at how we were going to implement across the bank. And we really did. We had a thing that was tracking wherever we were going to use Gen AI, and we had 1,000 requests and 1,000 ideas that people wanted to follow. And we quickly stepped back and said, actually, we need to think of 4 things that are going to make a differentiated business, make our business differentiated, and focus on them. And so that's what we've really been doing, making a lot more progress. I think we have We call them pilots, but they're pretty large pilots, 10,000, 6,000 user pilots, where people are using these large language models. We have learned that a small large language model is much more easy, or is much more likely to get approved through our governance cycle because it's more manageable. We have in a bank, we have a heavy risk function, a heavy audit function, a heavy legal function that really wants to make sure, and actually with data, I want to make sure that we're providing the right data. And because one thing that a very large language model could do is, if it's working off of bad data, is just provide bad results a whole lot faster, which causes a lot more rework as you go forward. So having the clear and trusted data is actually job one. But we really have learned that going smaller with more focused use cases is driving better value. The developer productivity is massive. And so as everyone's saying, doing developer is king. We've already, we have, I don't remember the numbers, but it's in the double-digit thousands of our developers are using assisted development, and it's fantastic. And so we're making, I think what I would say is we're making quite a bit of progress in the right places to use these new tools. And when it's the right place to use the new tools, we're really working hard to make sure we can put all the controls around security, around hallucinations, around protecting our customers around them. So I think we're making good progress. I think there is definitely a maturity curve that we've all gone through in the last years on both sides of what's the right place to deploy these techniques.
Maybe to piggyback on what you just said as well, I think from a go-to-market perspective, we have a role to play here. And for instance, when we start a sales-led discovery process with a prospect or a customer, we make a point of discussing what is the plan to go all the way to production. How is this tool going to be adopted? We bring that discussion to the forefront, because I think a year or two ago, there was just a lot of POCs that would stop there. So we try to be good partners from the beginning in planning that case all the way through.
Awesome. I feel like I can keep asking questions given the panelists are so knowledgeable about this space. I would love to leave a couple minutes for the audience for 2 to 3 questions. So I think I saw a hand first there, so we'll start. Can someone help passing the mic? Yep. Want to come over? Great.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Arjun, like Argentina without the Tina. My question to you is founder of SelfTech, Selfies for Smart Networking. My question to you is, you talked a lot about product market fit, but you specifically talked about pivoting as well. If you can talk about, recommendations or suggestions on how, or if you did even pivot, how did you find product market fit after giving up a business model that maybe worked or didn't work, but trying something absolutely new? And the reason I'm asking is because we built a very successful marketing platform, and we decided to pivot to something that we built internally because it actually had a better product market fit. And that decision was very scary for us. But I'd love to see how you guys did it yourself. Thank you.
I'm happy to start on that. I think for Pinecone, back because we're a 5-year-old archaic AI company, I guess now, when we started the business, there was no such thing as RAG, right? Like we had no idea that was going to be our biggest use case. We actually started the business trying to build more of like a better search product and search experience. That was like the core of what the vector database was trying to solve. As we started, once again, everything that we look at data-wise is actually about product telemetry, like what are developers building? Where are they seeing scale? Where are they seeing CSAT? Like what is and is not working? We started to realize that like RAG was actually the biggest use case, and we completely changed our roadmap now to build an inference solution, build an assistant product, things that we would have never done even 3 years ago, probably today. And that is now like the core focus of the business, but it was based on how we saw developers actually using the product.
Yeah, my only point I would make on a pivot is do it as early as you can. So which the corollary to that is try to find your product market fit as quickly as you can in your seed stage, because that's when pivots are easier to do. The more mass you gain, the harder the pivot gets, because you just have a lot more to change. So that's about the only thing I would add.
Ever? Do major pivots early and do small pivots later. I think the second question raised just behind you, and then I'll come back to you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Sahana. Thank you so much for the panel discussion. My question was based on for consumer products, what else is required for product market fit? Because if we do have problems and solutions, but then there are so many people going after it. Take for customer service, for example, or even code generation. There are clear use cases and so many companies going after. But when you as leaders, when you try to make a decision of who's going to win or how's the market going to consolidate, what do you think is going to happen? What is required?
Specifically for product market fit for a B2C product. Is that right?
More, yes, B2C, or even for developers. With so many options, what is it going to take for them to choose and continue using it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start and maybe we can help each other on this one. I think, honestly, the most important when it's developer-based and when you're not going to have a sales-led motion, it's going to be a PLG motion. I think the truth is going to be in the data, orchestrating your product to see where the potential bottlenecks are, and then A/B testing along the way to get to a point where the metrics are between bracket best practice, even if you're probably inventing what best practice means. But I think it's those conversion rates being improved and being able to repeat that across a bigger sample of data. And then having sufficient of a large sample of a target user that you could build your business upon that. But I'd say it's in the data, really.
I think what we see is most of the AI adoption is with B2B companies instead of B2C companies, just to be frank. And I think for most B2C companies, they are licensing like add-on AI solutions to existing software stacks that they're already using for marketing, customer success, sales, et cetera. We spoke to Gartner actually recently about this. They see the exact same thing, which is kind of why software companies in general are trying to invest more and more in AI. But I do think there's a place for like larger B2C companies who have the technical wherewithal to actually want to build in AI to take that on. We see it mainly in regulated verticals in particular, but it still is more, at least what we see, a B2B game.
Definitely developer adoption and retention.
Yeah.
I think I speak for everyone here where I would say, sorry for the echo, thank you so much for sharing the insights. We really appreciate it. I've got a question that focuses on go-to-market as well, which is what best practices can you share for building exponential traction post-PMF but pre-VMF, especially when developers typically are technical decision makers or influencers versus the enterprise buyers that are really required for monetization or unit economics?
Will you just tell us what VMF is? Product market fit.
Value market fit.
Value market.
Value market fit.
You're basically asking how much you should charge your customers once you achieve. Yes.
No, the question is, if you think about once you've got product market fit, you need to build a massive amount of traction before you actually get to value market fit and where you start to monetize. And developers typically don't pay. So it's like, how do you get that to volume?
Maybe I can attempt at a question first, and then panelists can think about it a little bit. I definitely think we're in a very early and very interesting phase of figuring out the unit economics for AI and these models. Like the largest labs are still burning cash and losing money on training large models, but maybe it's also an interesting data point of like the smaller models, whether they are diffusion, video, image, voice models, are actually way more economical to train and distribute and also grow exponentially given the use cases that are out there. So I think one is just the nature of like what the use cases and I guess the customer's willingness to pay and the kind of value jump is. And the other is really around, I guess, again, these panelists will share more about like each layer is actually cutting their price, whether it's, you know, the model layer, the GPUs, and some of them may rise if we have another shortage. So it's a very dynamic balance in finding where are the highest ROI and premium customers to go first. And then, of course, we'll just go through maybe another 5-10 years of commoditization. That's my 2 cents.
I mean, I think it depends very much whether your motion is sales-led or PLG, and it depends very much whether you're targeting the large enterprise or mid-market or SMB to some degree. I think if it's a top-down sales motion, enterprise-led, and you're talking to a CEO or a CEO -1, and you're able to qualify the business problem that you're addressing, I think it's a little bit easier to get there. Yeah. The opposite, if your target market is SMB, if it's PLG, it's a lot of experimentation.
I'd love to pretend that we're closer to value market fit than we are today. And I think that's what we said earlier of like helping customers understand the art of the possible of how you make money, how you drive productivity, how you drive efficiency, like something that they can hang their hat on. Because honestly, most customers we see at production level scale where they're running billions and billions of vectors, their CFOs are looking at the price tag of everybody here on the stage, plus, 10 other companies that are involved. And they're like, where is the ROI in AI? We have to get to that ROI conversation. And that's also where the partner-led sales motion helps a ton.
And Monique, did you?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I think we have, I'm sure this is on, but we have a hypothesis of where we can get value, and we're working on those use cases. I think if you come to us with a value outcome driven hypothesis and say, look, we've done the assessment and we believe that if you focus on this thing, whatever the thing is, we think you can get this and we can put the numbers behind it. That's what we're looking for. So if you build a use case around a topical area, one, there's two ways to go about it. I think you can work with the corporate or the partner that's getting the value to say, let's work this together to figure out how we get to the right answer. We have the numbers of what it's costing us. You have the hypothesis of what it could save, and we actually have it too. I think where we fall a lot in these is you'll save hours or you'll save weeks of time, and things process in 10 minutes that used to take 60 hours, but it only takes an hour a week from the person. And so there's actually no real save. And those are the things that I think we're learning as we put some of these things into production, because yes, it does, but we can't lose an arm and a leg. We need to change the whole thing. And so it is I think we have to work it together. And I think it's going to be an iteration. I think it's going to be hypothesis proven, hypothesis rejected. How do we iterate to get to the right answer and keep going? And it's harder for us. The intestinal fortitude on the customer side is probably less than the intestinal fortitude on the partner side. But it is, how do we work those through to get there? Because there is so much value to be driven out of it. And it's just getting to those use cases. But I think it's not going to be it's going to have to be a real partnership. You're going to have to find that customer, and we're going to have to find that partner that is willing to go the long. It's going to be hard. It's pick and shovel work, not glamour, I think.
Thanks for the great insight.
Fortunately, I think we are at time. I'm not sure if any of the panelists need to leave for the next meeting, but in case they can stay, if you have more questions, feel free to ask them after the panel is done. Sorry, there's a little echo. Thank you so much, Keerti, Marjorie, Lauren, and Monique joining us today and sharing your wisdom and knowledge. Really appreciate you being here and